Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Welcome to tonight's Sublime Text Live for the 16th of March. Time is being a little bit of a blur as of late. So tonight, I'm not sure how long we'll go. The plans for these things are always somewhere in the vicinity of the 2-hour range. In the last couple, we've gone a little bit longer than that because we've been playing with things. We'll see how things go tonight. It's been a little bit of a trying time. I've been working on something at work for quite a while now that finally culminated in a final demonstration of the final version of the code this morning. That meeting was very early in the morning for me because there were people in it from across the world because I work at a multinational company. So there were people from Toronto, people from the other side of the coast, people from the UK in the meeting as well. So I had to get up early to do that, and even earlier than that to prep. And I was up a little bit later than I should have been last night, getting everything set up and ready for said demonstration. So as a result, feeling a little bit tired. Do have the traditional coffee here, though, mind you. We've got a couple of things to address and talk about, and if you're watching and you have questions, of course, you can chime in on those as well. Let's just verify. We'll say this in the chat because I'm interested to know if the live chat is connected properly to this thing. It's a little bit of a deal. We're going to see anything update in there. There we go. All right, that's cool. Because I do stream on Twitch now along with YouTube, so I have basically duplicates of a lot of the stuff that happens in the stream that goes to different backing places, and I have to swap them around. For some reason, the URL of the chat dialog on this channel seems to change on a per stream basis. The other thing to point out here, and if I was to very quickly just tap something on this monitor, maybe while we're talking here, one of the things that I did here, if I'm able to see it, and I may not be able to see it because I am actually live right now. Yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to be able to show it to me there. There may be something. Oh, maybe it's in this tab here. Pardon me. This stream is going out in ultra low latency as a test. This doesn't support closed captions and 4K resolutions, but that's nothing that we do here anyway. But I didn't think to check the delay between the time that I do something like that and see it in the one monitor and the time when I see it there. That is a pretty slow or a pretty quick. It's probably only a couple of seconds here, I would imagine. So we're testing this out to see how the interactive response goes for these particular streams. Because it's when the chat gets rolling and people have questions about things, I like to be able to respond in a timely manner without like a 10 or 15 second delay, which has been the case in some instances. Just double checking here. Someone's asking a question inside of the Sublime Text Discord as well. Something about window changing in Mac OS. Mac OS, I do run Sublime on Mac OS, not as frequently as I might otherwise. So realistically, as I said, I don't have a ton of stuff planned for this evening. That was an ahead of time thing. There have been some questions that came in this week to go over. And there was a new release of Sublime Text 4, build 4099, I think. I really haven't had much of a time to actually play with that, so I thought this might be a good opportunity for that as well. Got a little bit of frog in my throat there, pardon me. So we'll just do that and then see where things take us. Yeah. Man. All of the prep talking I did apologies for that, the demonstration that I did this morning is really playing havoc on my throat as well, but we shall persevere. As I say, we have the coffee. The coffee, it makes everything better. So let's go ahead and jump on in and look at some stuff here. So we're going to need this one. Still a little bit of a, that is rough. So yeah, the first thing we'd like to point out here is welcome to the stream. If this is your first one here, we do this every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, whatever that works out in the time zone that you happen to live in. We talk about Sublime Text, work with playing with packages, spitball ideas for upcoming videos on the channel, answer questions that happen to be available in the chat, and otherwise just sort of hang out and have a lot of fun. So if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out. If you're watching this live, the replay will remain available in perpetuity, but it's only publicly available on the channel for 24 hours. So tomorrow at about this time, give or take a little bit, the video will become unlisted, which means it won't be found in search results. But if you look down in the description of the video, which you're looking at right now, there should be a playlist entry for Sublime Text Live. All the live Sublime Text Live videos end up in there. And the live chat, despite what it tells you when you go back to look at it later, is in fact enabled. The live chat will replay, but for reasons I don't understand, YouTube waits for some amount of time before it actually starts showing you the chat. And apart from that, if you have any questions, drop them down in there. You got a package that you'd like to see us play with here and go through how you might use something like this or set it up, we can definitely throw that in. Hello, Ayush. Welcome to the stream tonight. One of the questions that we were going to discuss is, yes, good morning for you. Good night for me. Should probably just say good day, and then it's going to work out for everybody, no matter where you happen to be. Ayush had a question that he was asking earlier in the Discord, which also reminds me that I am currently in the process of setting up, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, an ODAT Nerd Sublime Text Discord, which is going to cover what we do here on YouTube. Pardon me, what we do here on YouTube. So there's a section for suggesting videos, discussing packages. Also, the streaming that I do on Twitch, live stream ideas, talking about that. Because sometimes some parts of the community that I am in will work only on Twitch or only on YouTube or both, and we want to give everybody an ample place to discuss things. And also, any other questions that you might have for me as well, which is, again, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, one of those things that people have actually been asking me about for a while now, but it's only recently that I started to think that it may in fact be a good idea, because people ask questions about videos or want to provide suggestions for videos, and if we had our own Discord for something like that, then there's a dedicated channel for doing it, and that makes remembering these things a lot easier. And we can discuss as a community how we would like this stuff to work. Although, of course, for the bulk of Sublime Text questions you have, I would still recommend the Sublime Text Discord, because the community at large hangs out there. That increases the audience of people that you can ask your question to get an answer, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm not as familiar with as other people might be, for example. So because Ayush is here, and hello and welcome, one thing we can talk about here is you wanted to add commands to the command palette, if I remember correctly. Let's see, I gotta find the appropriate location. So you want to add commands to the command palette, but the commands weren't showing up there. And can you clarify a little bit what sort of commands that it was that you wanted to add to the command palette while we prepare an example of how you might do something like this, and talk about it for just a little bit. Because what you need to create is a Sublime Commands file. There are a bunch of these things here. Packages that add commands to the command palette are generally going to do it in one of two ways. They're going to create a file named default Sublime Commands inside of their own package, or they're going to create their own Sublime Commands file. For example, the channel repository tools package creates, as we can see here, a default Sublime Commands file. The default package was where the commands that appear in the command palette by default are stored. That's default Sublime Commands. But origami, and file manager are examples of packages that don't use that particular convention. This is completely up to you when you create one of these files. The name of the file makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. The only thing that's important is the extension of the file, which has to be Sublime Commands, and the format of the content of the file needs to be an appropriate thing for Sublime to be able to handle it. Historically, I think this stems from the idea that if you want to extend the menu, you have to choose the exact right file name. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Or when you do key bindings, you have to use the exact same name, because those are examples of resources that are stored in the default package. And there are an example of the mechanism in Sublime Text where when you ask it to load a resource, or it loads a resource for itself, say for example key bindings files, it will find all of the files by that name across all of the packages and combine them all together into one. And that's why Sublime can come with key bindings by default. Packages can provide their own key bindings for things that they do, and then you as the user can add your own key bindings, potentially overriding everything else. That whole mechanism works because key bindings have to be in a specifically named file that is all combined and loaded together. Otherwise, Sublime wouldn't know when it should use one key binding file versus another, because key bindings are something that is platform specific, right? Commands in the command palette, however, not so much. So it will load any and all Sublime Commands files, but due to that whole using the same name, some people will use default.sublime commands. And there's every possibility that in prior versions of Sublime Text, prior to version 3, that maybe that name was actually important for things. That's not entirely clear to me. I've never played with that in older versions of Sublime Text. But default Sublime Commands is going to show you the list of all of the commands that exist in the command palette by default that are defined here. It's not literally all of the commands that appear in the command palette, because some things in the command palette appear automatically on their own. For example, all of the commands of the set syntax variety, these are dynamically added to the command palette for every syntax that exists that is public. This isn't something you have to add. Sublime just adds this automatically. So create a new syntax, automatically becomes available here in this menu. The other thing where that is the case is snippets. Which, as we can see here, there are currently 2 here. The snippets for whatever sort of file that you're currently editing are always available here in the command palette, and it even tells you what you would use to tab trigger these things. So you notice there's 2 snippets here right now, commands entry and commands entry with args. Those are coming from package dev and make it easier to create these Sublime Commands files. If we were to just have a blank file and go for snippets, the only one that's available is the lorem ipsum snippet that injects that particular text right there. So that's examples of commands that exist in the command palette, but which in fact are not actually contained in any Sublime Commands files. But all you have to do is create a file with commands in it. So the first character of the file needs to be the open square bracket. The last character needs to be the close square bracket, because this is a JSON file and it's a list of commands. And then each command is, as you see here, the actual command to execute. If it requires any arguments, you provide them. This is exactly the same way that it works inside of a key binding file. The only difference is we're going to throw a caption in here, which is the name that it's going to have inside of the command palette. So very easy to add your own commands to the command palette. And by way of example, if we use this and then we use user default command, or default Sublime Commands, pardon me, I have a file in my user directory named default Sublime Commands. These are commands that I have personally added to the command palette myself. For example, being able to force my hyperhelp package to rebootstrap the package. If anybody's interested in doing that, probably just myself. I create a lot of plugins. This command doesn't appear in the command palette by default, so I just went ahead and added it. Similarly for snippet syntax, API docs, and documentation are ones that I added in here to make it a little bit easier to get at this stuff. This should actually change because it should be that now, so that's nice. And then of course we've created some plugins that we have used in in the past. Some of these plugins were actually created in live streams. For example, Open API files, which we can see here under the name Developer Open API files. That's what the caption says. So if we were to look at dev open API files, we can see that command right there. And this is going to allow you to open the files that are the Python files that represent the Sublime Text API, which can be handy for looking through and seeing the values of things and what methods are available and what methods aren't, and so on. And the Scratch Buffer plugin as well. Now, the other thing to note about this is that commands in the command palette can hide themselves. And there's a couple of situations where that might happen. And I'm going to say 3 of them off the top of my head right now. There could potentially be others, but these are the 3 big ones. First of all, every command has the ability to disable itself from the menu or from a use in a key binding if it thinks it doesn't currently apply. And I'm not sure offhand if we could find something like that here, but say, for example, the command for canceling a build currently disabled here in the menu because there's not a build running right now, so there's nothing to cancel. It knows that nothing can be canceled, so it disables itself. The cancel build command is in the command palette. And we can actually see it there, but it didn't really do anything. Now, commands that mark themselves as being disabled will hide themselves from the command palette because you want this to be the list of commands that you can execute right now. So if a command is disabled, then you don't want it to appear in this menu. Otherwise, when you choose it, nothing is going to happen. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to the user for items in this list to be grayed out, because then this is going to show you things you wish you could do, but it's not allowing you to. So that's one thing, if a command decides it needs to be disabled. Secondly, commands can determine if they are visible in menus or not. And those sorts of things are often used in things like the sidebar, or sorry, in the context menu. Because you'll notice if I do this, there's origami items, there's submerge items, there's SFTP items, and that's all there is. But if I was to say open resource and choose, say, something here, let's see, what do I have here? Show scope name, paste from history. This file is an override. I actually have a modification to this that makes my paste from history command work different than the default. Now when I look, there are override audit commands in here because the override audit package has operations you can take in certain files. It knows that these operations aren't useful in files that aren't overrides, so it hides them. It could also disable them, like this one, but having a bunch of menu items that are disabled 90% of the time, not a great user experience, right? So a command can also decide that it is hidden from the menu. And if that's the case, if Sublime was to ask this new pin command, are you visible right now, and it said no, it won't appear in the sidebar. And then the third thing that would stop something from this working is if this command happens to be missing, which would happen if the plugin host is broken or if the command name you use doesn't actually exist. So if I was to say new plugin, we can see the command right there, and I can trigger it and I get the sample default plugin command. If I change this to have a different name, and now when I say new plugin, it doesn't appear in this list. Hello, Ashwin. Welcome to tonight's stream. We're sort of taking it chill and easy tonight and going over the question that you had earlier about adding things to the command palette. Also, let me know what the quality of the stream is like, because we are on ultra low latency here, which means that the delay between when you say something, when I say something and when you see it, or vice versa, should be probably as low as YouTube is capable of getting it. We were just discussing a user's desire to put commands in the command palette and why they don't necessarily work. I just saw Daniel say test. I don't know how fast the chat will update things right there, but you know, my main concern with low latency mode is if it causes any stutters or skips or drops in quality if things can't keep up. I'm not entirely sure what exactly is the case there. The other thing is I can't broadcast in 4K support and have closed captioning running because there's not enough time for it to calculate them, I guess, and there's too much data going at 4K. Fortunately, I don't have the capability of capturing data at 4K anyway, and that ain't no big deal. There we go. That's not too bad, right? I'm gonna have to. Apparently, that setting doesn't inherit, but it's not quite as good at Twitch, but as Twitch is, but not too shabby, I don't think. For the purposes of these videos here and being on here to interact with chat and answer questions, seems like that's the better way to go. So that's a little background, Ayush, on how you would add commands to the command palette. Now you mentioned that the commands that you were adding weren't available in there, so I would guess one of those three things is the because of that particular thing. Yeah, unfortunately, that is not something that I have control over. That's just the, I mean, the the source for that, I couldn't think of the name, the browser source in OBS is set to run at 30 frames a second. So I'm not sure if it's not pulling the updates fast enough or YouTube doesn't push them out fast enough. Unfortunately, there is that. But that's mostly there to be able to have a record for the chat and what was going on at any given moment while we're talking about stuff. So on the whole, historically, shouldn't be too terrible. I had plans at one point to change my version of the new plugin commands to have different stuff in it to flesh that out a little bit. Never did get on with that. So yeah, if Ayush is still here and has examples of the commands that you were trying to put into the command palette that weren't appearing, we can troubleshoot that a little bit further. But on the whole, I would say perhaps the wrong command name or a command that doesn't exist yet, or it's something that thinks it's not particularly relevant for the current type of file. Not all commands do that, but some do, so that can be a particular issue. When it comes to coming up with the commands that you would like to put in these things, I would generally recommend the idea of opening the Sublime Text console and using Sublime Log Commands. And because we're in the latest build of Sublime Text 4, whose number I still don't remember, and I haven't really had a heck of a lot of a chance to play with this because I've been really busy at work yesterday, making sure that the demo that I was going to do this morning was going to go without a hitch, and that everything was done with that. Historically, you would pass true to this to turn command logging on, which, as you can see, tells you every time a command executes what the name of the command is and what arguments it took. And you can also specify false to turn that off, because the command logging stays on until you turn it off, until you quit Sublime. One of the great new features of this new build is that these commands automatically toggle if you don't provide arguments, so it's even easier than ever before to turn those off. And I'm pretty sure we can do something like this to see if these things are actually logging, which is also really cool. And Ashwin already created a plugin to do this. I actually have one of those as well, which could benefit from this, but I don't think I use it here. I'm not sure where exactly it was that I stashed that thing. I think I had, unless it appears in my videos, if you ever see me interact with the context menu in the console in the video, it might be there, but I think I prepared it for use in something like that, being able to turn the logging on and off, but I don't think I ever actually used it for anything because it has the ability to check things off, but there was no good way to know for sure unless it started from a clean slate. So it's exciting that that is no longer the case. And we might also want to check this. That the command palette also now logs commands as well. For a while there, it wasn't doing that. So if there's something that you would like to add into the command palette and it's not already there, and you already have some way to do it, it is possible to do something like this. You could say select all of this text and then say I want to add split selection into lines into the command palette. So hit the key that does it, and it tells you the particular thing. I don't think I pressed the wrong jiggy there. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I meant to press that one. And that's the command split selection into lines, right? So what we can do here is add in a new entry. I'm going to use package control for this one. And let's see, split the lines, because items in the command palette are alphabetical. And what was the command that we just saw there? We had to scroll this up so we can see, because I already forget. Boop, boop, split selection into lines. And of course we use a package dev, so thus. Save the file, and now I can select a bunch of lines, open the command palette, and split the command. Notice it already automatically shows the key binding. And there you go. Easiest possible way to do something like that. Of course, if you know that it appears in a menu or in a key binding file, you can also look that up as well. Let's see. Oh, a quick panel plugin. Yeah. That I don't think I've played too much with the quick panel's new quick panel item thing. There was something we were working on that we thought that would be handy with, right? Or am I thinking of the list input handler? I think this thing. I had the idea of doing something different with this, which I think I did, because it tells you the file you're opening, where it's coming from, and what version of the plugin host that it's running inside of. But yeah, it's neat that you can do that sort of thing. I think, this plugin that I wrote 4 years ago to make it easier to get at the settings with just a single key binding, key bindings, distraction-free settings. One of the other fun things about that particular thing, if we were to do, say, a little bit of this, is that if you're in a project, it'll open project-specific settings the exact same way. Although I haven't really used this in forever, since I got into the habit of using this to find the settings files. Is there a shortcut for adding a cursor on the line above or below? There is indeed. Let's go ahead and close this project. For example, if we had some lorem ipsum text, you can do this. Let's see. On Linux, it's Shift Alt down goes downwards, or Shift Alt up goes upwards. Use this a bunch. It always goes directly above where you are. And that should be, if we were to look for something like this in the menu, where would we find such a thing? This one right here, add previous line and add next line in selection, Alt Shift up, Alt Shift down. That's what I'm pressing now, right? Yes. Those are going to be slightly different on Windows, which confuses the bedoobers out of me at any given point. I think it's Control Alt up and down on Windows, if I had to guess. It's slightly different, or I have a brain hiccup that makes me constantly press the wrong key the very first time. But yeah, that is a very handy operation for if you just want to indent a few lines. It's very easy and quick to do something like that. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Did you post a link in there and nothing actually happened? Because I don't see it in my chat either. Let me double check a thing. The settings for that may be a little more restrictive than they otherwise need to be. Oh my gosh, I am the blinded. Let's see. Settings. Community. Let's see. Some moderators. Approved. Hidden. If you select this option, new comments with hashtags and URLs will be held for review. Well, that doesn't seem to be happening. I wonder if there's one in the live stream settings. Let's double see here. Unlist once live. There are precious few settings in here. I do not see. Oh, what's this one? Viewer activity. Nope, that's just super chats. That's not going to be a thing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not seeing that at all. And even as a moderator, you'd think that it would totally show it to me so that I could determine if I want it to be in here or not. That is wiggy. Let's see. Let's go to the live control room on this thing and see what we can see here. Let's see what happens if I go into the live control room when I'm already live somewhere else. There is live chat. Yeah, it doesn't show it in there at all, which is just weird. Do you see an option down next to the emoji picker for super chats? Because I don't see one of those either, but maybe I can't because I'm not allowed to super chat myself. That would totally make sense. Yeah, there does not seem to be an active thing here, so I will definitely look into why that might be the case, because that should not be. Oh, maybe it's in here. Allow live chat replay. Slow mode is totally not turning on. Yeah, it totally thinks that that's in the community settings. Add approved user. Cool. Well, thanks for that. I will look into what it is doing. Presumably, you didn't see anything deleting out of it. That is wiggy, because it works in the other chat, right? Or when I was streaming on the other channel, it should have worked there just fine. Okay. That was nothing said there. Here, this is a sample. Boop, boop, whoops. You be quiet, speakers. I turned that down. That's cool. We're going to derail here for just a moment because I cannot go without trying to solve a problem. Well, here's a link. If I do it, I presume it works, right? So I'm surprised that if you post a link, it just goes away. But if you could share that just in the Discord, that would be super cool for anybody that happens to be following along here. And potentially in my Discord when I get it all set up. But shoot, that is not what I intended to do. Go back. There we go. And then we'll get rid of that and leave well enough alone on that operation there. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That's what I meant to do. Alrighty. That's just a link to the Sublime Text forum, if you didn't already know. Oh, cool. Let's take a look at this bad boy right here. I'm going to copy this link and then close the Discord and then create a new tab. And, oh, here's something. I can't remember if I need to do anything to get Nightbot to come back into the channel here. So let's see if that does anything. But Nightbot may be MIA. Nope, okay, Nightbot's totally still working. Big brain. I can't remember this stuff. But neat. Taking full advantage of the new Sublime Text for 3.8 plugin host too. Really starting to achieve synergy with format strings, having worked in JavaScript and TypeScript for the past month, and how much easier it is to generate log files using their version of the same thing. But this is from some pretty small, tight code here. That is a nice job. And this is the one where you found a bug, right? Where after if the quick panel loses the focus, it doesn't gain it back again ever, which is an interesting issue all on its own. That one's not going to work. That one's an OBOT nerd only one, which is getting something to run in YouTube is vastly harder than getting something to run on Twitch, because Twitch uses IRC and YouTube uses stuff. Remember the complications of getting YouTuberizer to work, for example. So potentially something in the cards, but not something that's going to work right now. Yeah, I know, right? It's a bummer. Technically, I can fire up the thingy that would allow me to do it manually, but getting it to go in the form of something like that is a little more involved, shall we say. Um, this is a pretty clever way to pull the function names out of here too. You said that you're not primarily a software developer, right? Yeah, and more big brain stuff will totally totally be coming. I was gonna rip all of that stuff out, and then I remembered that they're used by YouTube, so better make sure that we actually leave well enough alone on that one, just to make sure. Let's go ahead and close that as well. Hey, that's interesting. Note that the title of the window is still oh, cool. Everybody loves a low latency time, as long as you don't pay attention to how long it takes to appear above my head, because that seems to take forever even when I do it locally. The vagaries of I mean, it's not even like a slow chat, but do you think it's an issue with the new build that I closed the lorem ipsum file and there's no tab, but the caption of the window still indicates that it's there? Ah, cool. So, oh yeah, okay. Sort of a weird redraw bug. It sounded vaguely familiar. I haven't really, like I said, this build came out. I downloaded it right away, but for the last day and a bit, I've been working on something that's available on that monitor over there, as a matter of fact, whose purpose is to do some. Actually, you know what? I bet I could do a little something like this. Let's see. Oh, shoot. No good way to do that, huh? Open image in new window. In new tab. Yeah, like that. Basically, the stuff that I've been working on is this. I guess we need to zoom that down so we can see it. I've been working on something at work that takes data from one system that gets live updates from the stock market and pushes it up to another system that is web-based stuff, using WebSockets to make subscriptions and such. So I've been making my life kind of unhappy with TypeScript and JavaScript, but I stayed up late last night going over what we wanted to do in our demonstration, making sure everything was working. And as a result, because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, as a result of staying up a little bit late to get all of this stuff settled out and make sure that everything is good, because it's a big thing. And there was a meeting that was very early this morning for me, because there were people in it from all over the world, because the company that I work for is a multinational. So we had to pick a time that was the least inconvenient for everybody involved. As a result, I'm working on not as much sleep as I might actually like. So potentially, if there's not a lot going on in the stream, we might call it after, say, an hour or an hour and a half or something, seeing how things go. But if we have curious problems like why you can't paste links in the chat, that would totally be a thing. I don't think that Ayush has any more information available here for what it was he was trying to do in the command palette. He said he added commands, but they weren't appearing. But without knowing what those commands are, it's hard to say why that might be the case. But hopefully what we did previously is going to be enough information to help dial in what the problem is there. And the other question that I got asked, which I thought might be interesting to look into, is related to Sublime REPL. And something that I need to do here, which is I would imagine something we're going to try to work out in one of the Twitch streams that I do. Plug, plug, plug. I think I remember to put a link down below. Wednesdays and Fridays, basically at this time on Twitch with the imaginative username of ODATNerd. We've been working on building our own stream overlays like the big brain that appears when someone goes into the chat and not into the Sublime Text and types brain. And eventually, once chat messages filter through enough places, the Rube Goldberg machine kicks off, and off the top of my head, assuming that everything works, eventually after some period of time, unless it's broken, but we saw it happen before, a blue brain spins around. Probably not going to do it now just because I said that. It's been one of those days. Thank you, brain. Now it's there. That one's a very convoluted Rube Goldberg mechanism of back and forth web calls to make that thing appear there. It was one of the very first things we did on those Twitch streams. And one thing, getting back to what it was I actually was going to say there, I would like to do is, because one of the things I want to do in these streams is answer questions that I get throughout the week. I get a lot of questions in the comments of videos and such. And I can provide a little bit of an answer there, but it's nice to be able to come back to them and go into it in a little bit more depth. So I'd like something that allows me to gather those out and put them in some sort of nice graphical carousel of some sort. Seems like the easiest way to do something like that would be something HTML related, because then it would be very easy to paste the text in and have it styled and looking nice. I mean, easy in that I'm not very good at web stuff sense, as opposed to putting it into graphic software and massaging it around. So there's probably something we're going to work on in one of those streams. But in the meantime, the question that someone had was they were using Sublime REPL and they wanted to use it to run, create a key binding to execute the current file. And they asked if I knew how to do that, and technically the answer to that question is no. I have played with Sublime REPL a tiny bit in a previous version of Sublime Text that's been probably a couple of years now, but that was because someone was having a problem. So, oh, what's this? I have a main Sublime menu with a single entry. If it appears before file. We can investigate that. Let's see. You want to have a top menu entry that appears after help in the menu. The deal with that, whoops, is, I know I have done this in the past. I think what you're going to need to do, like if I did something here, I'm just going to spitball a thing here for a second. We're going to have to give this like a caption, right? And a mnemonic of, say, A. Like that. If this was a completely blank menu file, I mean, well, for me, it still ends up after help. But where does help go? That doesn't seem entirely correct, does it? So, that's why. Yeah, pardon me. Okay. If your menu looked like this, then it appears at the beginning of the menu. Because the rules for joining these things together is that items with specific IDs join in. So if your menu file looked just like this, if this was what your menu looked like, then yes, it'll appear at the beginning of the menu. If you want it to appear after help, then you need to have an entry in here, even a blank one, that just says ID is help, like this. And then this is adding items to the help menu, but it's not adding anything. There's absolutely nothing in there, in which case it comes after help. And similarly, if you wanted it to come after file, you could probably do something like that, or edit, or selection. And I'm guessing at what those actually are represented as here, but of course I'm going to back this up back to the state of this file before we did any of that stuff, so that it's at the end. If you were to look at default main menu, like so, oh, maybe if I spelled default correctly, default main menu. I'm going to pretend it's because I didn't sleep, but yeah, all of the top level menu items are going to have an ID entry right under their caption. It just so happens that they happen to be the same as that, so there's nothing magic going on there. Similarly, if you want to inject items into one of the sub-menus, like if you wanted to put something inside of the edit menu, you would make the entry say edit, and then that's how those items go in, which is why it's not impossible to put menu items exactly anywhere you want. For example, if you wanted to put something in here after open folder, you can't, because there's not an item in here with an ID that allows you to do that. The next closest one is down here. So you can add items in under file window or file closer, etc., but you can't necessarily dial that in. Now, we mentioned first, going back for just a second, is there a way to make the menu bar dark? Well, under Linux, it's going to follow your theme if you're using Sublime Text 4. If you're under Windows, the menu will also display as dark if you're using a dark theme that also requires Sublime Text 4. For Sublime Text 3, under Windows, it may be technically possible to do that, but there's not a way directly inside of Sublime. It's if it does exist, it would be a setting that you have to fiddle directly inside of Windows, which might require some sort of tweak software or directly modifying the registry in some fashion. I never really looked into that too much. You can change the color of the title bar to be a little bit darker, but the menu bar not so much. Yes. And how do you access the Sublime menu file? You can access the contents of any package file by using View Package File from the command palette. This is going to give you a list of every file in every package, and it's a filterable list. So the main menu is always in a file named main.sublime menu. Yeah, spell it correctly. The one from the default package, which is this one, which is the one that I have open right now, is the default menu. Every other one of these things is items that are added onto the main menu. This is the thing that I mentioned previously in the stream. If you weren't here, there's a lot of resource types in Sublime where when it loads them, it looks for very specific file names, and then it finds all of them across all packages and combines them together into one. And examples of that are the menu files like this, key binding files, Sublime command files, to name but 3 of those things, which allows you to add onto the things in a list. So you can add items to the command palette, you can add items to the menu. Generally, for packages, you might find very specific things in here. For example, you can see exactly what items Terminus adds to the menu, which is just its settings command palette. Settings Terminus command palette command for edit settings. That's weird. That one might be some sort of backfill. Hard to say. In any case, yeah. The title bar will go dark again if you're using Sublime Text 4. That's a function of the theme that you're actually using. So for example, if I did UI theme, select theme, and picked the oh, that is bright. The color of it is changing. It may not be immediately obvious here. It's a little bit lighter in that one. Oh shoot, no, I suppose it's going to be stuck there. Let me just do that, put that back. The caption bar in Sublime Text 3 of a window caption is only customizable under macOS, where themes have the ability to change the color. It's not possible to customize the menu bar, or the window caption rather, of Sublime Text 3 under Linux or on Windows. Sublime Text 4 does provide that ability, which is, again, based on the theme that you're using. So I tend to use the adaptive one, which makes this darker. The default makes it a little bit lighter. Other themes might change it to a completely different color. And I believe if your theme doesn't have the correct rules, it would just display as a normal window caption. But it's been a while since I did that. Whoops, pardon me. I'm in week 3 of still not being used to having items stuck to the right-hand side of my face. Usually the microphone comes out over here instead. On the whole, if you're a Sublime Text 3 user and you have a license, I would recommend playing around with Sublime Text 4 because there's a lot of cool new features in here. For example, the thing that we just saw. If you were using a theme and you wanted to make a little bit of a tweak to a color or to customize your color scheme, these commands are built in. They used to be something that you needed an external package like package dev to do, but now it's built in. So say I wanted to modify my color scheme. I can just hit this item. This is the one that's on the left, and this is my customizations. If this was the first time you were doing this, this would be empty, but I've made some slight modifications here to the markers that are used in the gutter area to mark things. I'm making various things glow, which is a new Sublime Text 4 feature, and then I have a few simple rules in here that I have added up, and I've also modified the background color to be slightly different. So the normal Monokai background color is this, but I find that to be just slightly too washed out for my taste. I need it to be just a little bit darker, and 3% darker is just the right amount for that particular thing. So this is a couple of examples of some pretty handy features that are available in here. And then, of course, the darker menu. If you're on Windows, you can hide the menu entirely and have just a hamburger menu up there. That doesn't work under Linux. What we can do is just toggle the menu completely off. Because I tend to only pop it up when I'm actually requiring it. The list of items, let's go ahead and close that. The list of things in the change log is vast. We're currently running build 4099, which came out just yesterday. This is the first time I've ever really played with it too much, but if I was to grab the scroll thumb, you can see, and I think I did this in one of my videos recently, exactly how much stuff has been going into these Sublime Text 4 builds as bug fixes, new features, tweaks to existing features, going quite a ways back down the old list here. Going and going and going. There is a ton of stuff that has happened in Sublime Text 4 since the very first build was dropped on the 13th of November 2019. So it's been sort of a wild ride here. I think it's because GTK is a butt. If I had to guess, and if Ben's here, he could probably chime in, but I would imagine it's because it's more problematic to customize that sort of thing under Linux, where GTK is used as the graphic toolkit for a bunch of different window managers that might have their own tweaks and visual styles. So unlike Windows, where all Windows applications by default just get the exact same window decorations, and the only time that changes is going between versions of Windows, like Windows version 7 versus Windows 10. Everybody's more or less gonna look the same, and as a result it's a lot easier, not super easy I would imagine based on what Ben said, but probably a lot easier to get that working. And the case in point for that, of course, is that right now in my copy of Sublime, if I was to just create a random window, this is what the controls for Windows on my particular window manager look like right now. They're very small. They're obviously that color. But notice how much taller this is then there. That's actually not supposed to be the case. And there's controls that are missing here as well, because the window should have something to pin it to all of the desktops, or I should be able to roll it up into just a caption to move it out of the way. None of those things work here. I can't roll the window up. I can pin it from here, but the window caption doesn't exist there, and that's all has to do with how I'm using a different window manager. So I would imagine that that's a large part of the reason. It's probably not impossible. It's probably just not something that you want to try to do, because the sheer number of ways for it to go wrong is kind of daunting, if I had to guess. Realistically, things go wrong enough in the general case without begging things. I would love to have that, but I'm okay with the menu just being gone, because I don't tend to use it as often. Look at that, Ben's totally here. Hello, sir. How close did I get to potential reasons why the hamburger menu doesn't appear under Linux? Now that I've said that, I have a vague recollection that you mentioned something about it in the Discord as well. Also, we're running on ultra low latency here, so in theory, this is the fastest that I can respond to chat if I see it scrolling out of the corner of my eye and I'm not in the middle of talking about something. We're minorly making coffee in order to keep ourselves a little bit awake here. We've managed to answer a couple of questions. I had a thought. Let's do this. Against my better judgment, let's get a list of stuff here. Whoa! Welcome, Mash. I can't believe why you're just like up. What is it, like 5 o'clock in the morning for you right now? Now I know your secret real name. Ooh, but you know mine too, I would imagine. I make no mistake or no bones about hiding it. I don't think there's a way to filter a list of maintained packages. No. Package Control's website. Yeah, you would open on the wrong window, wouldn't you? The source for this is open source and will totally accepts pull requests, but I don't think there's a way to necessarily look things up in that particular way. Yeah, no, nothing directly comes to mind. I would hope that packages might, I don't know that developers are going to go back to packages from a long ways back. And the prime example of this that I'm going to open right here is Sublime REPL. It's in the top 25 of packages. It has 1 million installs. It was last touched 6 years ago. Will Sublime Text 4 make this guy decide to come back and start working on his package again? I'd like to say yes, but in all likelihood, if it's been 6 years, the main reasons why this might not be modified is that this person doesn't use Sublime Text anymore, or it might be because it's just feature complete and there's not really a lot to do there. Well, thank you for showing up. Yeah, 4. Yeah, I thought it was maybe this is the time that you showed up before. I may have thought I might remember you, but I can't read your name, so I'm not entirely sure. But if you've if you've been in the chat before, chances are good I will remember. Did you ask a question previously? I'm just saying hello to my friend Mashed Potato here, who's one of the fun, cool people that I've discovered on Twitch. She is a game streamer, streams under the name of Mashed Potato, and she is pretty awesome. I gotta say, as I mentioned, I was up early this morning prepping for the big software demo that I had to do for people, and I was at like 30 minutes out before it was going to happen, and I was despite the fact that I do live streams all the time, it's different when you're doing it for your bosses. So I'm a little bit nervous about that stuff, but she was online. She was streaming herself playing a fun game, and it was a cool way to unwind and sort of relax a little bit and loosen myself up before I got into the stream. Prakhar, yes, I believe I do remember you. Yes, you asked a lot of questions. That did not go down the right way. The coffee is trying to kill me. This is something that we were talking about in Jadal's stream earlier today, but I find my YouTube friends are awesome, but there seems to be a level of camaraderie on Twitch that's a little bit different, where communities and channels that are similar, will share viewership and share friends and promote each other, and it's really a wonderful thing to behold. It's a wonderful little corner of the internet. YouTube, I find personally not quite the same way, but maybe that's because I'm so niched in on one particular level of topic that there's just not a lot of cross work that I could do with other channels. Not entirely, no. Of course, if you have a YouTube channel and you want to do some sort of collaboration and you need a nerd, hey, I'm here. Despite what my shirt says, today is the day for that. How are you doing today, Krishna or Prakhar, depending on that? Are you having a good day so far? We're just sort of fiddling around with Sublime Text, asking questions, chatting. It is, but it'd be interesting to know what packages are out of date, because there are some packages that are interesting. Maybe because of the ultra low latency. There are some packages that are perhaps, like I said, just not updated because they're feature complete, and unless there was a bug, it's always possible to fork a package or create pull requests and get it updated that way, but that I'm not entirely sure about. No, I have done some C sharp stuff. I can't talk right now. What one was that one? Boop. I have written stuff in Sublime in C sharp. This was the first stuff that I did with C sharp in any meaningful sense using .NET, but I don't have anything particularly special set up for that. I just have a build system that runs .NET build, .NET clean, and .NET run to build and run the thing, and that's pretty much it. I would imagine if you use LSP, there's probably some sort of C sharp language server, which is something that we were playing with in the last couple of streams. But indeed, yeah. And shameless plug time. I should have a drop for shameless plug, but down in the description of the video, plugin 101, big old stream of videos that teaches you how to write packages and plugins by telling you all of the stuff you need to know about the API. It doesn't give you the idea for what package you would like to create, but it does tell you how to technically get the effect that you want. Oh, no hate taken. No worries about that. Now, one of the things I like to say is I personally prefer Sublime to weightier tools like IntelliJ. Those are the tools that I came from before I found Sublime Text. But just because I don't like, say, IntelliJ or CLion for development of C or PyCharm for Python, that doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that for me and the way that I work, they're not that good of a fit. But if there's another tool that is a better fit for somebody else, it's not a good fit for me, that is like perfectly fine, because everybody works in different ways. Everybody needs different things or likes different things. That's why it's great that there's the choice to be able to do that. So I feel the same way about operating systems as well because I'm using Linux here. Sometimes the inclination is to think that Windows sucks or Mac OS sucks or whatever. And I mean, there was probably a point in my life where I thought that way, but I've reached a point now where I know that Mac OS is great at some things. It's not so great at others for me, but that's just me. Other people find it a much cooler experience, and whatever's getting them to do the work that they need to get done as quickly and as efficiently as possible and as enjoyably as possible, that is like great. Even Visual Studio Code, which I know I'm probably supposed to hate because it's the evil stepchild. I'm actually considering the idea that for a channel point redemption on my Twitch channel, for some number of channel points, you can make me stop working in Sublime and start working in Visual Studio Code for 15 minutes or something. But I'm envisioning that if I did that, the 15 minutes would be me figuring out how to open my project, and then by the time I got it open, I could go back to Sublime. But it seems like it might be a fun thing to play with. Depending on what you get out of Visual Studio Code, you may find the LSP package something that is very handy for you. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and say install package here. Is there a .NET or a C# LSP package that's immediately available here? We could check that and see, because I'm not entirely sure. One of the things that's coming to the channel is a video series on LSP, what it is, how it works, etc. There's one for Dart, CSS, Angular, Bash. I probably said this last time too, but Bash. All right. Lint, graph, HTML, IntelliFence, JSON. And of course, this is not the full list of these particular things. These are just the ones that are sort of support packages that are immediately set up. But if you're unfamiliar with LSP, LSP stands for Language Server Protocol. It's a server, still runs on your system, doesn't run on the internet or anything, that is capable of analyzing your files in a language-specific way and determining problems with it, linting errors, being able to format it, being able to provide completions that are more intelligent, like being able to do code flow analysis to know that at this point this variable represents this class. These are the completions. It's the exact same thing that Visual Studio uses. And don't worry about blowing up the chat. This is what we're here for. We're here for chatting with the community about Sublime Text and anything and everything. So that's perfectly fine. And I, in fact, do use Sublime Text for all of my coding work. Whether it is packages that I'm writing or, bad example, because all the code that I have available here is going to be a package of some sort. Over on my Twitch streams, we're working on a web application for doing overlays and chat bots. That's stuff that's written in JavaScript. I'm doing that all in Sublime here as well. I also use it as my notepad. So even on Windows, much like here, I have the button. If I need to jot down a quick note, I just hit the button, type some stuff. Have to clean those windows up periodically if I have stuff. It is my one-stop shop for editing type things. That said, I don't do a ton of stuff with auto completions, although that may change once I start working with LSP a little bit more. And I guess the other big thing between Visual Studio and Sublime, as I understand it, is debugger support. And Sublime doesn't have debugger support built in, but it does. There's a package called, or there's a thing called DAP, the debug adapter protocol, or debugger adapter protocol, which is basically LSP but for debuggers. Somebody's working on a package for that, so that stuff is also in the works. Yeah, it's just like super handy, super fast, and I like to tell the story that for a long while I was using JetBrains tools like IntelliJ for Java, WebStorm for web stuff, I briefly used CLion for C. When I was writing or iOS applications on the Mac, I used app code for that. Highly recommend that. And they were good for a while, but over time I just sort of got unhappy with how large they were, how long they took to start up, and it was sort of started to become a drag. And then I went looking for more lightweight things and found Sublime, and it's like greased lightning basically as far as speed is concerned. It starts up like instantaneously. I'm editing. Life is great. Yes, remote editing. But Terminal from the Sublime Text Discord is working on that part as well. Is remote editing? Oh, actually, I may be conflating that. When you say remote editing, do you mean like remote code sharing with somebody else, or remote editing as in just opening files on a server and editing them in some fashion? Because technically that could go two ways. I'm not sure if Visual Studio can do one of those. Now, I've never used, I think I mentioned this before, I've never used Objective-C++, only Objective-C, but I like it as a language. I'm weird that way, but as I mentioned, I'm also a little bit of or was at some point, a Smalltalk fanatic as well. For such a small, tiny little language with a lot of fun, neat little features, and Objective-C borrows from that so much, you can't help but like it. Also, if you write code in something for 2 decades, you tend to grow a fondness for it, one would hope. I mean, maybe that's the secret to me liking JavaScript. Maybe I just need to spend 20 years writing JavaScript code. Doesn't sound like it would be a fun time, though. Getcha. Yeah. There's actually a package that I have used for that in the past. Yeah, NSObject, the lock init auto release. Don't forget the auto release. Don't forget to create an auto release pool. I'm actually old enough school that there's a lot of new stuff, or I guess not now, but back before Swift was the thing, when they were doing more iterations on Objective-C to add more features to it than what were there traditionally. There was a lot of stuff that we had to come to terms with when we were working on the iOS applications, because that part was slightly different than the standard method for doing stuff like the one that you outlined there. I've used, and I don't know the name of the thing. This one, I guess, yeah. Not necessarily the remote editing that we're discussing here per se, but I have used this to great effect in the past. Basically, there's a shell script that you put on, say, the headless server that lives underneath your desk to the right, where you run things like your bot and your chat server and whatnot. And if from inside of there, you install remote subl in Sublime here, say on this machine, a shell script on the other one, and when you rsub a file on that machine, it does. Oh, son of a boop. Apologies. It does all of the magic of synchronizing and shipping files over, so you can edit them here and they just immediately go there. Not great for large directories of things. And I guess using SSH is and its remote file mounty action is also problematic for a variety of reasons. But I personally don't find a lot of use for something like that. But again, that's just me. I tend to be on the machine where I'm doing editing, or I use Vim. But I'm an old fuddy-duddy in that particular regard. What was the interactive response on that particular brain there? It looked like it might have actually popped up pretty quickly that time. Maybe Nightbot finally woke up. I don't have the chat timestamp turned on here to be able to double check that stuff. But let's see. What things have we talked about here? Will Sublime Text 4 revitalize the package community? I hope so. Certainly, there's a lot of exciting new API features to. Good job, YouTube chat. Nightbot wins the race. When you when you do that, Nightbot has to notice something in its version of the chat and then ping a web page with a request that causes it to make a web request to another page, which causes an application written in Node.js to send a message to a web page loaded inside of my OBS to tell it to make the brain appear. And the fact that that could appear before the actual message appears here is kind of mind-boggling. But isn't the internet a wonderful place? I gotta say. Uh, oh, hang on just a second. Someone's asking a question in the Discord. Is there a good way to preserve cursor view positions after auto-indenting? Right now I have a plugin that takes contents of the buffer, feeds it into a command line, then replaces the buffer with the output. Is there a good way to do something like that? Well, I mean, you can save the selection and you can save the viewport, right? I might actually have an example of that particular bit of code here. Technically, the both of them should be coincident, but you know, technically you should be able to say something with a link in the chat and have it go through, or at least have it tell me, because presumably I'm a moderator in my own chat. Is there a list of the new features that are coming? Well, there's this thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. Lots and lots of small bug fixes and such. I have set up a Discord enough that there is an icon for a server, and there are some channels that I've set up in here, but that is as far as I got because I had some stuff that I needed to get done for work, and I used part of my free time for that. Oh, thank you, Ben. For hopefully there'll be a list slightly before the release, but if we wanted to tick some of the things off on our hands, new theming system, a bunch of new stuff related to autocomplete. I wouldn't be surprised if it was almost a complete rewrite based on the number of things that have happened in there. The ability to do things like have kind information and the annotations in the symbol list. Autocomplete has fancier stuff like being able to see the types of things here, and it can also display items down there. Syntax highlighting now has the ability to branch, which means normally syntax highlighting does one line at a time and then moves on, so any construct that requires knowing what happens one line ahead to know how to handle this line technically never really worked very well in Sublime Text 3, but in Sublime Text 4 it has the ability to go forward, see that it made a wrong guess about what this line represented, and then go back and try something else. That's pretty fantastic. Again, the theming things, we have the new custom under Windows, not completely visible here, but if you watch the videos on the channel, you can see the menu is now dark, the caption is smaller, the tabs are a different shape, which is actually something that's visible here. It is an exciting time to be a Sublime Text fanatic. I like to think there's been so much stuff there. There's even been a lot of additions to the API that allow things that weren't available before, like knowing when a tab moves in and out of a window, or when a window is being created, or when a project is being loaded. For example, and I don't know if I have. One of the things that we worked on in streams in the channel previously is the idea of having key bindings that are specific to a particular project. A list of the new features that are going to be coming to Sublime Text 4. Ben said that there will definitely be one at release time, but I was mildly hoping that it would come out slightly before release time, because that's going to make it a lot easier to make a video about all of these particular things. And yeah, Ben is indeed one of the Sublime Text developers. window that I have here for this under the Linux. And one day he will be responsible for the Sublime HQ product that is the world's greatest nonlinear video editor. But I haven't convinced him yet that he should create that. But one day, hey, we're all waiting on bated breath for that one. He's also responsible for boop, 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 boop. Is it not in package control? Anyway, he created an SBNF package which allows you to create a syntax definition by creating a BNF file, Bacchus Noir form. It's a way to specify grammars for things, and then it does all of the terrible work of coming up with the syntax constructs that you need for something like that, which is one of those things that's, it's on the whitelist. That's right. Yeah, it's not technically. Well, it is sort of a package thing, right? I thought. Maybe not. Or maybe I'm thinking of all of the times that someone said that it should be a package and it should ship with Sublime by default so that life is good. I know that there's a web page for it, which unfortunately you would have to share with me in the Discord because the chat's not going to let the links through for reasons I don't understand right now. There's a sandbox thing. If you're familiar with creating languages in BNF form, definitely something to look into. It's one of those things that's on the gigantic whitelist of things to do in streams and play with, but the list just keeps getting longer from both ends, so I'm not sure how all of that is going to work. Twist his arm. Twist it! It seems like something that would be handy to have built in. And I say that not having only played with it a little bit. It gave me fond remembrances of the years when I was working with creating my own languages like Chit Chat, the not entirely but almost completely rip-off of Smalltalk, or Tiny Smalltalk. It could run a couple of things. It was more of a proof of concept thing. But yeah, there are so many features coming to Sublime and bug fixes and tweaks that it's really hard to even enumerate them all. And that's why in video in like last month or the month before, I just had the long scrolling list of this is all the stuff that's been happening in Sublime Text 4. And the list is even longer now than it was then, and it was already pretty long then as well. And so much work has gone into making the API nicer for the LSP package to be able to provide the code intelligence and code completions and stuff that brings even more enhancements to the editing experience of Sublime for people that are interested in that sort of thing. So it's a super exciting thing. Yeah, isn't that right? I just I love to have a little bit of experience in everything. So I wanted to create a little language just to see what goes into that. I wanted to create a Palm Pilot application just to see what that was like. Ditto Android applications, iOS applications. At one point, I even made a card game that had a built-in CD player because, playing CDs was the king of the times at the time, and I wanted to be able to do that. I will. Thank you so much for hanging out. I actually thought that you fell asleep in your chair with my boring talk, but thanks so much for showing up. Hope to see you in a live stream soon. And look for me potentially playing Fall Guys on Twitch sometime in the summer or fall when it becomes available. Or maybe there's cross-platform play and we could play together. I'm not entirely sure. But it was totally a blast watching you run around and and jump. You came so close to winning so many times. You were robbed. I'm telling that right now. You were robbed. Also, pasta, pasta, root, route, roof, roof. Are examples of words that one of them is the right way to say it, One of them is the way that I used to say it, and it's been going on for so long that I can't even remember anymore which way that it is. I just assume that whichever way I'm saying something is right, or sorry, wrong and not right. Process versus process. Yes. Also, it's apparently irritating to Americans if you say rubber band instead of elastic band or elastic band instead of rubber band. Again, I can't keep these things straight. I just know that I'm doing stuff wrong. And you didn't even have to use any channel points for that. You definitely need to stream more so you can make sure that I can gather as many channel points as humanly possible for, poking the buttons and making embarrassing things happen. But again, thanks so much for showing up. We'll catch you sometime soon, I hope. Does anybody else have any other questions about Sublime? I'm going to jump very quickly to, let's see, I missed the, okay, so this person wants to know if there's a way to preserve the cursor view positioning after auto indenting, and whether or not that is easy or desirable is a completely different thing. But I actually have something in here. My nose is very itchy right now. I don't know off the top of my head. I would guess, yeah. Let's dive in as we do. Oh, here's that thing. If you're unfamiliar with one of the new features of Sublime 4 is the ability to select multiple tabs, allowing you to very quickly see two things side by side. And those associations remain grouped so that you can be working with these two things, jump over to this file, go back to those ones there as you're working, which is a very handy way to do something like have a temporary split in a window. So while you're looking at, say for example, this, if I wanted to see the reference to this, I can click the button and see the reference right there, and then go back to what it was that I was doing without having to open another file and do stuff. Another feature of this that is super awesome, and I need to get more in, there's key bindings here for select to left and select to right, for being able to focus left and focus right and that sort of stuff. I need to get more in the habit of using these. I haven't as of yet, and that's because one of these, I can't even remember which one now, didn't quite work correctly. Or it disabled itself. I think it was like select to left was always disabled, select to right worked. And as a result, I didn't want to get into doing anything with it until all of the key bindings are there. But yeah, the exact same sort of thing. I'm not sure if the key binding for doing that, pardon me, doesn't do that natively. I don't think, but it could. The key binding, yeah. I've used the mouse for that more, but now that there's key bindings for it, I think I would get more used to it. I just haven't really gotten into that sort of thing yet. But yeah, most of the time when I do it, I'm either doing it this way or doing this action here, which clearly is a tiny bit fiddly. Also, historically, until the recent theme changes that were made a couple of builds back, I never really took much advantage of having multiple things selected because it was kind of confusing knowing which was which. But now their inactive pane support is built in, so the item that doesn't have the keyboard, the input focus, is dimmed a little bit, which makes that a lot easier to see. Also, I don't know how well this comes across in the stream, but I tweaked the theme color for the line that just runs underneath the bottom there, which provides a connector that shows you which item represents the currently selected tab, which I find makes that a lot easier too. Yeah, I think it's just regular text chat, and that makes me sad a lot. I wish you could use Markdown in comments as well. I can't. I bet you if you were to look over all the comments and all the videos on the channel, 90% of them are going to have little backticks all over everywhere because I'm so used to doing code blocks. I was going to say, was the switch file command modified for that? Because I don't remember it being, except that I kind of remember some mentions about it. So we can do a little bit of simple VM because this has some C code in it. So that is the key that we would normally use for that. Is there a different key binding that does that now? Or is the command just capable of doing it, but the key binding doesn't do it? Let's check it out. Pardon me. Key default Linux. Thusly. Whoops. Side by side. So use Alt-Shift-O instead of Alt-O. All right. I probably could have guessed that based on things, right? Yeah. So, boop. You can get a lot of them if you keep pressing the button. I don't know if that's supposed to happen, but that is totally a thing. Let's close some of those up, shall we? That was probably best experienced in a single pane view. Whoops. Come on, you. Oh, that is a single pane view. Pardon me. Now I got multiple versions of the same file. So Shift-Alt-O. Boop. Switches to there, and then you could switch back and forth between them. Yeah, I would imagine it should. This is doing this in C is the main use case that I've ever had for that particular operation. Here's the thing where I look in here to say that Alt1 and Alt2. That's right. Yeah, we can easily swip back and forth between those. So if you've already done this, don't push the key binding again because it always goes to the right, and then you end up with multiple copies of the same file in a cascading fashion, which is, you know, interesting to say the least. But yeah, that's also a very handy thing. Maybe we get to see something like that in a Twitch stream. Yeah, I'm pondering what sort of projects we might work on after I'm done with the other stream stuff. More than one other file? What would an example of that be? Stop it, speakers. Like a TypeScript definition and a spec file, for example. I mean, is that one of the things where we can say switch and actually look at the implementation of the thing and what it is that it's actually doing? Ah, yeah. This is something that I haven't played with in plugins yet, but I'd really love to, which is the whole idea of using the new event argument to know when modifier keys were pressed to make a command do something based on that, because that seems like it would be quite handy as well for a variety of things, but I haven't really got my feet wet in that. And we're so far behind on merging documentation for the official documentation into Snappy. I fear for that particular one. Is that a thing that actually happens? Because that sounds spoopy. But maybe that's just me. Incidentally, whoops. Browse command list, totally one of those things that takes advantage of fancy new features in Sublime Text 4. here in this thing, we can display information over here that lets you know what types of commands these are. And you can see the arguments underneath and the location of such a thing. And then, of course, when you pick one, it jumps directly to the command. This is something that we implemented in one of the previous live streams on the other channel. And I believe I have a gist for that up somewhere that I could share. I've been meaning to add it to the package repository, but I keep forgetting. Yeah, good times, right? And is that another example of different people work different ways and being able to be flexible enough to support all the different ways that people like to work, or being able to customize things so that things work the way someone wants to work. I really can't stress enough what a joy it is to use a tool that doesn't make assumptions about how I should get a task done. You know, like the sort of thing that you see in, say, IntelliJ, where they assume you're going to be working on a project. It's probably this kind of project. You're going to want this. You're going to want this. This stuff is built in. This is going to do this. And you're like, I don't really want any of that. It's just in the way. And here in Sublime, I can adapt it to the way that I work instead of having to adapt myself to the way that the Sublime developers thought I should want to work, which is just incredibly freeing and a joy to behold. Any good examples or pointers for making a really basic stupid extract function plugin? Let's see. It doesn't need to understand scoping, since that gets well, that I don't know that I have any examples for that without having to know that. Depends on the language, though, I suppose, because if you're using Python, the items in expand selection to indentation will get you a lot of the way towards something like that. But yeah, I have done in a live stream the idea of extracting data out per se. The tricky part of anything grabbing data out of Sublime, and I'm using tricky inside of the proverbial double quotes here, is in determining what it is that you want to extract, because it's as simple as saying, let's turn that off, because that's going to be unfortunate. If we do this, that's the first 20 characters of the file. Plucking that particular information out, ridiculously easy. Knowing that character 0 to 20 is the part that you need to extract, that's the part where things tend to get a little bit hairy depending on what it is that you're trying to do. Hello and welcome to the stream, Piyush. We are also big fans of Sublime Text, or at least I'm a big fan of Sublime Text, but you would expect nothing less of someone that got his own t-shirts printed. Select lines and execute command extract, and then it would create a new function at the bottom of the file. Grabbing the selection is a very easy thing to do. So basically you want this to, if you manually selected the function and hit something and it stuck it to the bottom of the file, you could do that with a plugin. You could also do that with a macro as well. Let's create a new window, because windows are where it's at. You might do something like, say, you need a new plugin, and we would name the command. So maybe you'd name it extract function command, because you're going to extract a function, and you want to modify the contents of the buffer, which means you need an edit object in order to call the API functions to do that, which means that you need to have a text command. And inside of the run is where that's actually going to run. So let's extract that out. So you want to be able to grab the current selection. So the selection in the buffer is something like this. Self.view is going to be the file that is the command is currently running inside of. There's going to be If you're familiar with object-oriented programming, this is a class that we're defining that represents the command that's being created, which is a subclass of a text command, which gives it its shape and API, which is how it knows that the run method is the one that's going to be executed. And one instance of this class will be created for every text area in Sublime that can be edited, like files, this area down here, the input area and the command palette, and so on. Self.view represents that particular thing. And subster is the thing that you use to grab the data out. And also, self.view.cell gives you the selection in a current file. So this is going to be a list of items. So you might say, for example, that we want to take the selection. We actually want the very first of these selections. And we can cut that out and paste it into here. And that's as easy as it is, presuming I did that correctly, to extract the selection, which you'd want to store into a buffer like this. So now the variable func stores the text that's currently selected. Take care. Thanks for popping in and enjoying the stream. Remember, we do this every week, and I also do coding type live streams if you want to just hang out and watch random software development. I do that over on Twitch. I don't have any advertisements for that unless I remember to add something to the description down below the video. So this is the first part, extracting the selection. And we could even say that print this thing. I'm going to name this extract function. I got this by using an item from the command palette, but you would use Tools Developer New Plugin if you wanted to do this. I just added it to the command palette because I create far too many plugins. It's going to offer to save the file in the correct location, make sure it's a Python file, and check the console. It has been loaded. So all we have to do is select this. And if I was to come down here and ask this view to run the command extract function, boop, 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 let's spell it correctly. Okay, now let's do this part. And because I didn't get a chance to do it this stream. Slight failure there. Note that when I saved the file, it said it reloaded the plugin. Every time you change this, Sublime automatically reloads it, so we should be good to go now. There's text selected. Again, we ask the view, run the command extract function. Did it do it right this time? Yes, there's the function. Good to go. It has been extracted. So what do we want to do? We want to stick this to the bottom of the file. I mean to make those, I've been meaning for a while to make them a little bit cooler, but they're kind of growing on me. The new plugin functionality, would I imagine from the... You mean it would be in the command palette? Is it actually in there? Do I have two of them now? Because I have one in here that I added myself, but I wouldn't be surprised. There's been a couple of things that I discovered in that particular case. There's a couple of things that we could do if we wanted to stick this into the bottom of the buffer, but the easiest thing to do is to do this. We ask this view to please run a command, and the command that we want it to execute is the append command, which asks a file to append content to its end, and then you need to provide this arguments, which is the characters that you want to append, and what we want to append is the text of the function. So if I save that and select the function and we ask it to execute, now it appears inside of the file twice. And that's probably the simplest way to get something like that going if you're interested in that. You might also note that, in fact, if you wanted to, you could cut this part out and place it here if you don't need to use the text for anything else. And now it's just a one-liner. So from a plugin perspective, there's this is a way to do that. There's another way to do the exact same thing. we're going to do that and save that to put it back to the way that it was. I would say what you might want to do here is something like is enabled. Whoops, pardon me. I have a plugin that we were working on in another stream. Is there a list of commands somewhere and the required arguments? This is actually something that was asked earlier. The standard advice is to use view package file and then choose default Sublime Commands, or sorry, Sublime key map, default Windows keys, for example. Or, you know, because I'm having a little bit of a difficulty there, the easier way to do this in a lot of cases, saying preferences key bindings. This file on the left has, you know, lots of commands. You could see exactly what they're doing at any given time. Personal recommendation in that regard is to drop down to the console and type Sublime Log Commands. If you're using Sublime Text build 4099, just run it with no arguments. Otherwise, add true in, and now every time you do something, it tells you exactly what command it executed and what arguments it took. And then if you wanted to know how to select text, that'll tell you this is the text for copying, this is the command for moving to the end of the file, this is the command for pasting, etc. So if there's something that you know how to do already, just turn on command logging. That said, if we were to open a tab here and say this, avert your eyes, but docs.sublimetext.io is the community-driven documentation, and if you search for something like command list or command reference, I had a link to it when this was in a different place. I'm not sure if it's actually searching anything in here. You need to peek around in here. This got a bit of information. Interface for commands. Command dispatching. I mean, somewhere in this thing, clearly, it's in. Oh, sorry, it's in the reference section. It's not in this section. Pardon me. The layout of this is slightly different than it was before. If we looked at commands, this has a list of all of them, or at least all of them that were known at the time that this documentation was written. And then it also mentions how you can the ways to discover commands. So for the sake of how tricky that is to do stuff, this is the link if you wanted to jump to that thing directly. Because this line here is saying take the contents of the current selection and extract it. So the 0 means the first of the selections, right? Because if I did this and this, there's now 2 selections. This one's 0 and this one's 1 in this parlance, even though that's not the order that they were created in, or if you will, even if I did this one's still 0 and this one's still 1. They always appear in the top-down order. However, and this is the thing that catches a lot of people unawares, this cursor is a selection. It just happens to be a selection that isn't spanning any characters, so it's empty. But note that it's impossible to have any text selected one way or the other without having the cursor immediately cranked onto one side, or the left or the right of the selected text there. That's because the cursor and the selection are the same thing. So if you wanted to handle more than one selection, this needs to be smarter. You need to iterate over the list of selections to do something with them. And you may want to make sure that the selection actually has something in it. Because if we were to run this extract command, I'm going to turn command logging off here for the time being. We zooped it back to this. There's just a cursor in there. And it looks like nothing happened, but notice the file was modified because nothing was appended to the end, right? Yeah, the community documentation is it's an ongoing community effort. It actually used to be referred to as the unofficial Sublime Text documentation, but sometime last year, I think it was, one of the 2 people that are responsible for the site disappeared off the internet. We don't know what happened to him. I don't think anybody ever found out. Hopefully he's okay and just not, lost access to that email address that people had for him or something, but they lost the ability to update the domain records for the site where it was at, so it was moved to that new community documentation site and reworked. So just to say here, one thing we can do is turn off that and say this is enabled. And this also tracks back to something we talked about earlier in the stream. Commands can tell Sublime if they should be enabled or disabled at any given point. And Sublime will actually ask them before it executes them, should you be executable right now? And the command can say yes or no for reasons just like this. And you do this with an isEnabled method in your command. It's going to take the exact same arguments as your run does, except it doesn't get an edit. That's provided only to run and nowhere else. So if your command takes arguments, they have to be here too. The default is to say return true, which means this command is always enabled. If we were to set this to false instead, then even when I select some text in here and run the command, nothing happens because Sublime asks it, are you enabled? And it says no. And what you might want to have in here is say return something like self.view. Can't type. If the selection 0, if the length of the selection is greater than 0, we're enabled. Otherwise, we're not. So if I was to run the command now with no selection, nothing happens. We see nothing was modified up here. But if we were to select some text and do it, then it does happen. Just sort of a little bit of a safety that you can put into your command to make sure that it doesn't run in a situation where it's going to do something untoward. You could also do something here like making sure that the number of selections is only 1, so that if someone has multiple things selected, that it's going to do what they expect it to do, or not do anything at all in that case. The other thing you could do for this particular case of just grabbing the text and pasting it at the bottom of the file is create a macro, and the easiest way to do that would be to use tools record macro. We're going to need to modify this, but if we select the text, copy it, press the key to go to the end of the file, and then paste, we can come back up into the tools menu and choose, say, stop recording macro and then save macro, and we'll just call it untitled for the time being. And if we were to undo that and use view package file and look for untitled macro, we can see exactly what this thing did. Yeah, the list of commands in there is semi out of date. I don't think there's anything that's been added since Sublime Text 4 in there, for example. It hasn't been updated in a while. As a matter of fact, if we do doop. Oh, did I? Yeah. I don't have it available currently, but I had the list of commands. Oh, maybe I do have the list of all of the commands here inside of this particular file. Yeah, that is the index. There we go. This just has more versions of the thing in it than it should technically have. I used that version and threw it out. But yeah, say we didn't have this part. We have that part and that part and that part. So what we've created here is a macro that copies the selected text, moves to the end of the file without extending the selection, and then does a paste, which is really what this whole thing is doing, right? Now I named this untitled.sublime macro, so if we were to go into key bindings like so, if you look in the left for macro file, you can see that there's something here called run macro file. And again, if you want to do something with the key binding and you're not entirely sure, this is a good way to find that. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it over here. We're going to add a comma. Oh, sorry. We're going to copy the whole thing for this purpose so that we don't make it unhappy. But we're not going to need most of this. I'm going to zoom this panel out. Say we had a key in here. Could be anything. I'm going to use Control plus Alt plus H, for example. The command is run macro file, and the resource is in the packages. The macro you save is going to be in your user package, and it's named Untitled. We throw away this part because we don't need it. This is not technically conducive to the example that we have here. And just to make this easier to look at, let's sort of split this down like so that we can look at it that way. So you might see this in your key bindings as when you press Control-Alt-H, run the macro file command, ask it to execute untitled.sublime macro. And back over in this window, this is untitled.sublime macro. These are the commands that it took. Copy the selected text, move there, paste. So now we can select the text and press Control-Alt-H, and the exact same thing happens, and we didn't have to write a plugin in order to do that. And there you go. There's another way to do that as well. There's a ton of different ways to get this sort of action. And if we wanted to, in our key binding, we could also add a context in here that makes it only allow this key binding to run when there is selection. Items selected, and there's examples of that over in this file as well, like num selections. So we could copy this part down and paste it into here, add a comma, say this key binding has a context that says that it only runs if the number of selections is equal to 1, and that's not what we did before. The other one is selection empty. This stuff is documented in the documentation on key bindings. What contexts are, which ones exist, how to use them. So we're going to say this. We're not going to have to say match all true because there's only going to be one. So now this key binding will only be active when there's exactly one non-empty selection. Control-Alt-H. So if we come over to the file here and push Control-Alt-H, shoot, did I do that wrong? Num selections equals 1, selection empty equals, pardon me, I did that backwards. False. Oh, yes, sorry, my bad. I forgot that was in there. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm not used to having the chat up there and doing something on that side of the window. I've been working on the left for the last long little while. So apologies. This is what the key binding that we have been working on that you can't see because it's hidden behind the chat of people saying, I can't see your chat, looks like this. The command, which is built in, run macro file, you tell it what macro you're going to run, which is always, when you create your own macro, it's going to be in packages user. Give it the name that you saved your macro as, and we've added context in here to say that only run this command if the number of selections is 1 and the selection is not empty. So if we were to come over here, press the key, Control-Alt-H, nothing seems to happen because there is nothing selected. If there were 2 selections and I push the key, nothing happens because there only needs to be 1. But if I was to select all of them and hit it, now it does the thing, right? So that's the other way that you can do that. And then also the thing that Ashwin mentioned as well is yet another way to accomplish that. There's a ton of different ways to do all sorts of this stuff. I'd probably go the plugin way myself because I'm a nerd. Macros also work. Key bindings also work. As a matter of fact, if you use the chain of command package or the multi-commands package, you don't even need a macro. You could create a key binding that does all of those 3 commands all in one shot. And of course, the whole operation does indeed get a lot more complex when you actually need to figure out programmatically where the text that you want to extract is coming from. I'm going to go ahead and delete those particular files, but hopefully that's helpful. It sounded like it was, which is all to the good. And we are at the 2-hour mark here or so, and I desperately require a little bit of a nap because I didn't get a lot of sleep. So I think we should probably press the button. Which brings us to this here. Thanks so much for showing up here. We had a good time. We did a lot of help. Hopefully you found this helpful. Remember, you can always show up every Tuesday. I do these things here, and also I stream on Twitch as well. Down below description probably seems like something I probably put in there. If you have never heard of chain of command, I would recommend, if I was to, and you can't see this because I'm typing inside of my Sublime Text, I'm saying get video link, and let's say we want to get something for thus. This video here might be something that you're interested in. It talks about these two packages that I just mentioned, chain of command and multi-command, both of which allow you to create a key binding that executes more than one command in a row, which is sort of the same as doing something with a macro. The difference being that macros can only record and play back a text command, which is something that directly modifies the buffer or the visual state of it, like moving a cursor around, whereas chain of command can execute anything. So yeah, it's a command that is very simple. As a matter of fact, we could write a version of it ourselves in only a couple of minutes. It's very simplistic. The two packages do the exact same thing. The only way in which they differ, besides the fact that the command name that they provide is different, is in how you tell them what commands to execute. One of them looks more like the items from an actual key binding than the other. They need to be in just a slightly different format. The video goes over both of those two things. Which one you use entirely up to you, but a handy way to chain multiple commands together. And I think this is one of those things that people are lobbying to maybe get added into Sublime as something out of the box, because it is so small and simple, because it's one of those things that people like at a very frequently, want something like that. And again, as this is a reminder before we dive out, I'm glad I was helpful to you and to anybody else that had any questions tonight, that the live replay stays public on the channel for 24-ish hours, give or take an hour either way, because I have an alarm to tell me. Then it becomes unlisted. It's still available after that period of time. It just doesn't show up in a search, but there's a Sublime Text live playlist on the main channel page, and should, if I remembered, be in the description as well. This video is already in there. All of the lives end up in there so that you can easily find them if you want to go back over any of the stuff. And live chat replay is turned on. It will appear, but for reasons knowable only to YouTube, sometimes it takes 24 hours or something before it actually starts showing those things. So we will see you in the next stream. If I was on Twitch, we would go see if there was somebody that we could raid into, but we don't really have the ability to do that here, and I don't have any videos to go live for us to jump directly to as a premiere. So we're just going to call it here. Thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully see you in the next live stream here on YouTube, or in any of the Twitch live streams that we'll be doing later on in the week as well. And of course, in the comment section of the videos, and coming soon in the Discord as well, once I get that all set up. So everybody, please have a sublime day, night, evening, week, month, depending on when I see you next, and have a sublime day. I'm gonna push the button now. I'm sitting way far back. One of the things that happened this week, I got a carpet under my desk. Now my chair doesn't roll very good. I need a mat. I'm trapped under here. I'm trapped, I tells you. Night, everybody.